Letitia James and Fani and deranged Jack Smith, what they should be doing is fighting violent crime. And that would lead me to the end. I will say that President Biden, number one, stop weaponization. Fight your fight yourself. Don't use prosecutors and judges to go after your opponent, to try and damage your opponent so you can win an election. Our country is much bigger than that. The other thing I say to President Biden, close the borders now.
That was former US President Donald Trump issuing a warning to Joe Biden to fight your fight yourself. The Republican nominee hopeful made the remarks after the Supreme Court's unanimous decision that Colorado cannot bar Donald Trump from appearing on the ballot.
This could have changed the entire election trajectory for Donald Trump if he was removed from the ballot here and it was upheld by the Supreme Court. There were a number of other states that were ready to do the exact same thing and more challenges would have come. What this does is solidify Donald Trump going into the election as being legitimately on the ballot. Essentially, they put aside this question of whether he was responsible for an insurrection on January 6th and instead looked at whether the state had the ability to actually remove him itself. What the Supreme Court ruling has said in part is, for the reasons given, responsibility for enforcing Section 3 against federal office holders and candidates rests with Congress and not the states. The judgment of the Colorado Supreme Court therefore cannot stand. All 9 members of the court agree with that result. The disruption would be all the more acute and could nullify the votes of millions and change the election result. Section 3 enforcement were attempted after the nation had voted. Nothing in the Constitution requires that we endure such chaos, arriving at any time or different times up to and perhaps beyond the inauguration. One of the interesting things we saw after this decision was released, or opinion we should say, from the Supreme Court, was the Trump campaign was ready with a fundraising link specifically linked to this Supreme Court opinion. This has become a feature of the Trump campaign to link these court battles with fundraising because we know his legal fees are stacking up. As you can imagine, Donald Trump was very happy with the result and warned against any further attempts to limit his ability to be the candidate this coming November.
When you make a decision, you don't want to have your opposing party or opponent or even somebody that just thinks you're wrong bring a criminal suit against you or any kind of a suit when you leave office. I have that right now at a level that nobody's ever seen before. I have rogue prosecutors and I have rogue judges. I have judges that are out of control. And it's a very unfair thing for me, but serving perhaps as a sample to others of what should not be happening when you make good decisions.
The internet is reacting to Donald Trump's message. Some have posted on X, Trump is back. Looks like Trump is winning this year. And commentator Piers Morgan says it's the right decision. And the 9-0 ruling says it all with this stupid attempt to thwart democracy. Colorado Secretary of State Jena Griswold expressed her disappointment over the decision, claiming it's now up to voters to save our democracy.
Larger reaction is disappointment. I do believe that states should be able, under our Constitution, to bar oath-breaking insurrectionists. Ultimately, it will be up to the American voters to save our democracy in November. Regardless of this decision, American democracy still remains very much under attack and at threat. And this upcoming election will be crucial for democracy's survival in the United States.
The ruling comes just a day ahead of Super Tuesday, which is the biggest election day in the Republican primary calendar. 16 states across the US will be going to the polls to decide who their candidate should be. So far, Donald Trump has defeated Nikki Haley in Iowa, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Missouri, Michigan and Idaho. And the former ambassador to the UN has beaten Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, President Biden is struggling to overcome doubts over his leadership. A recent New York Times and Siena College poll found 48% would vote for Donald Trump in a hypothetical rematch, compared to 43% that would vote for Joe Biden.
All right, so let's talk about this new polling that's around about Trump. I mean, this is massive, right? So you think about it. Okay, this is after some losses, multiple losses in terms of the courts the huge financial fine in and around his business. Yes, we'll see where things go in the next little while when it comes to Supreme Court and a whole bunch of other issues. But the New York Times poll, 48-43, 10% undecided. The Bloomberg poll saying that Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, Wisconsin, he's leading. If all of that's true, then he's back. Now, what's fascinating about this, I've got to say in particular, James, is we can't pretend that the Democrats have still got the big scare in front of them. They have already set it to 11. They're trying to push it to 13. You know, the end of the country, a dictator day one, all of that stuff, and particularly that state polling. This is when I start to really take notice and go, okay, this might actually happen.
Well, it's impressive. Only 25% of Americans think the country's heading in the right direction. So that has to count for something as well. So these are some of the reasons why Trump's doing so well. Californians are abandoning the state for other states that are less socialist and less grotty, less crime-ridden. Of course, they've got 2 million migrants that have illegally entered the country. So these are the things that are fueling Trump's success at the moment. He's going to do really well. I can't wait to see him back.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, Nicole, my sort of conventional wisdom and looking at things going, 6% of people in independents, we can all bore ourselves with numbers, by the way. A significant number of independents say if he's found guilty of anything, then bang, they're walking away. Young voters, of course, aren't behind the Democrats at the moment because of positions in and around Israel, Palestine. But Trump is getting stronger, and if the New York Times is even willing to show it, then something's going on.
Exactly, Paul. So I think we're seeing a current president who clearly, unfortunately, isn't up to the job. They've passed a raft of legislations, new laws that are having a pretty catastrophic economic and, environmental impact as well. So Donald Trump is offering a very different alternative and quite a positive alternative, I think, in the view of many Americans.
Well, as Michael says, get ready to pack my bags. I think I might have to go before the election. Go and cover this thing in real time and just double check that the orange cheese is just as orange as it has ever been. So let's get to some bold predictions, or you can comment on Trump if you want, Michael, but I'm in my last 60 seconds. So your bold prediction for the week ahead.
Well, apropos what you've just been saying, Biden will come under increasing pressure this week. I think there'll be some open outbreaks within the Democratic Party saying, Joe, it's time to go. As I've said many times, he will not be the Democratic Party candidate. He has no chance of winning the election. And, mate, get out 2 suitcases and start putting the undies in, the undies and the slippers. Just don't fill them, just start.
Start the packing process. All right.